Hi everyone, Nubkeks here, and I have some super exciting news for you today. It's going to be a good one. I missed the video yesterday. I got my second shot of the COVID vaccine, so that kind of took me out of it for a bit, but I'm back in action, and good, because just on time. We've already seen most of the Mythic raid. By the way, Heroic Sylvanas, the final boss of patch 9.1, Sanctum Domination raid, that is being tested tomorrow, so I'm going to obviously test that out. We have some mythic bosses too, and I'll have the video on Sylvanas out as soon as possible, followed by the mythic bosses, so stay tuned for that, of course. We've already seen the new dungeon as well. I already did the full playthrough of that. What about Mythic Plus though? What's going to be the new seasonal affix that replaces Prideful, right? Prideful has a huge effect on the routes you're going to take. Well, as of today, or yesterday I suppose, we have the first data mining for what this new affix could be. So this is the data mining we have, and then we can extrapolate from this as to what the rest of it could very, very well look like. So we have two anima powers, oh, interesting, tied into this, and these seem directly linked to the actual current Mythic Plus affix. So we have the Athame of Necrotic Wounding. Your harmful spells and abilities consume the target with Creeping Decay, inflicting physical damage every 2 seconds, reducing healing and absorption received by 2% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. So presuming this stacks per player, if you stack it up to 10 times per each player, that's 20% reduced healing and absorption per player, 5 players in a group. If this does stack, that would be 100% reduced healing and absorption if everyone in the group is hitting the same thing. Kind of interesting, right? Kind of interesting. There's not a ton of enemies that heal, but the ones that do heal, this power could let you completely play around that. We also have the Volcanic Plumage. Your damaging abilities have a chance to create a gout of flame beneath the target that erupts after 2.5 seconds, doing 3,500 in Mythic 0 fire damage to all enemies within 3 yards and knocking them upwards. There's a 10-second cooldown on this proc, and it's a 15% chance to proc, so it's a pretty good proc chance. You'll probably get this, you know, maybe about every 20 seconds or so realistically, 15 to 20 seconds depending on how often you're actually able to attack. Like healers can't all the time, tanks might have to kite, that sort of thing. But yeah, this is obviously based off of Necrotic, and Volcanic's obviously based off of Volcanic, so this brings up a whole ton of options. Now, number one, we don't know exactly how this works. We'll look at the other affixes in a second. Possibly you'll just get a random selection of these during your weekly runs, maybe scattered throughout the dungeon after every boss, who knows, maybe off of rare mobs, who knows. Possibly you will only get ones that correspond to your current weekly affixes. So if you have a Necrotic Volcanic week or something like that, you can get the Necrotic and Volcanic positive anima powers to help you actually complete the dungeon. It's quite interesting. Let me know what you think, what you would like to see. Personally, I think what I would like to see is just you would get a selection of the powers based off of their current weekly affixes, so you know what powers you can get every week. It makes the bad weeks actually good for you because you can turn those powers against the enemy. That would be awesome. And I actually kind of would like as well if they dropped off of significant enemies throughout the dungeon, so you kind of slowly be building in power over the dungeon, and you could hunt down those mini bosses, that sort of thing. Now, if we hop over here, these are all of the affixes that are in the game. Well, there's a few that have been removed, like Inspiring. Oh, sorry, no, Inspiring is in the game, but Beguiling, that's the one, and Awakened, obviously, they were previous seasonal affixes. So let's take a look at these, and let's consider what positive effects could we get if this stuff was working for us. So Prideful obviously will be gone, right? Prideful will be gone. Spiteful, Storming, and Inspiring. These are the new affixes here in Shadowlands. So Spiteful makes fiends rise from the corpses of non-boss enemies, pursues random players. This is fairly straightforward, I think, to be a positive thing. Whenever you kill an enemy, you could get them to rise up. It would summon a little minion to fight for you, and they would go and attack enemies for you. That could be pretty cool. You know, perhaps it could be based off of landing killing blows and stuff like that. I'm not sure. Could be interesting in terms of gameplay, or certainly tricky, skill-based, if, let's say, everyone in your group had to choose different anima powers. So you had to choose who was getting which ones. And yeah, then stack Spiteful on one player, let's say like a Shadow Priest with Shadow Word Death, and have them try to finish them off. That could be interesting. Storming, while in combat, enemies periodically summon damaging whirlwinds. I think this one would be relatively uninteresting, but you just randomly be spawning these whirlwinds. They do random damage, but they would also do some random interrupts as well. So that could be good, but it does seem quite random. So that one is not super exciting, but it could be decent. Inspiring. This one is intriguing. Some non-boss enemies have an inspiring presence that strengthens their allies, so it makes them immune to crowd control and interrupts. So that becomes very intriguing. How could this work for the players? Would one player get an inspiring aura? Would the inspiring enemies instead buff the player? Or not instead, but as well as buffing enemies, would also buff the players? Would it just be an immunity to interrupts and CC? Or could it also, give you a damage boost, a healing boost, that sort of thing? I'm not sure, but let me know what you think. But this has obviously a lot of potential. It's quite a generic thing that could be tweaked to do anything. Awakened and Beguiling obviously aren't there. I don't see them really doing anything with Tyrannical or Fortified. But here we go. This is where stuff starts getting quite interesting. Bursting. When slain, non-boss enemies explode, causing all players to suffer damage over 4 seconds, and it stacks. What makes this interesting to me would be that perhaps the bursting would also apply to enemies. So to clear through the dungeon faster, you could actually start triggering bursting fairly aggressively. And so long as your healer can heal through it, this could also do really good damage to the enemies in the pulls that you're doing as well. So that could really switch up the routes that you take through the dungeon. And you could do some pretty spicy things with healing cooldowns in a pretty fun way. That's actually, in my opinion, would be a lot more fun than just the regular bursting. So we'll see with that one. Interesting option. Raging, non-boss enemies in rage at 30% health, doing double damage until defeated. I guess this could work for players. 30% health, that's a little bit rough, to be honest. So let me know your ideas for this one. I mean, if it was a direct correlation here, it could just be the players do double damage when below 30% health. So you would try to get to 30% health and not heal people and push through. That seems pretty complicated. That seems pretty rough on pug groups. I don't know. It would be a big skill thing. It'd be super risky, but super high reward. I'm not sure. Maybe something simpler like while below 50 or below 70% health, you do, 20 or 30% more damage. Something a little less intense might be better, but let me know what you think. Do you like the high risk, high reward idea, or do you want something that's smaller, more forgiving? Sanguine. When slain, non-boss enemies leave behind a lingering pool of ichor that heals their allies and damages players. So this becomes very interesting. The sanguine pools that enemies drop, perhaps you could use those to heal yourselves as well, right? So keep the enemies out of the sanguine pools, but you guys want to stand in them. Instead of damaging you, it's actually going to heal you. That could be quite fun, and also take a lot of pressure off of healers. Perhaps you could even manage a run with no healers at all. Just simply rely on sanguine to get through. Wouldn't work on a tyrannical week unless you could pull packs into the boss, I suppose. You could pull weak packs into the boss, stagger their deaths to get sanguine pools. I don't know. Interesting. Bolstering. When a non-boss enemy dies, its cry empowers nearby allies, increasing their max health and damage by 20%. So again, as well as bolstering the enemies, this could also bolster you. So this would be more about, triggering a bunch. You'd still play it, I think, the same. You'd trigger a bunch of bolstering at the end of a pack, try to kill them all together at the end. But it would mean that when you go to pull the next pack, that you'd have a bunch of bolstering stacks, which is pretty powerful. This would really speed up your run. This would really speed up your dungeon run. Just do medium-sized pulls, kill them all evenly, and then just go and nuke down the new pack really quickly too. Intriguing for sure. Teaming has been removed. Grievous. This is an interesting one. So when you're below 90% health, it stacks up this dot that gets worse and worse and worse with each stack. It has to be removed by being directly healed. In terms of how this would apply to enemies, obviously most enemies don't heal. So yeah, it could be a direct correlation, and just literally you bring enemies below 90% health and they just, stack up to 4 stacks of Grievous and they start dying moderately quickly. And it could lead to gameplay where you do want to pull lots of enemies at once, just kind of nuke them down to 90% health, and then start slowing, CCing, kiting, and let Grievous do a lot of the work. That is possible for sure. Alternatively, it could be something like, when you're high on health, let's say for every Grievous stack you're missing. So if you had 0 stacks of Grievous on a player, that player would have 4 stacks of anima Grievous, which would pulse damage to nearby enemies or make their attacks apply a dot. And then let's say if they went to 1 stack of real Grievous, they drop to 3 stacks of anima Grievous. If they went to 2 stacks of real Grievous, they drop to 2 stacks of anima Grievous. You sort of get me? So it'd be sort of this swing in terms of how many Grievous stacks you have on you and rewarding you for that. That could possibly work as well. But yeah, I think there's interesting directions they could go with that. Quaking. Now, quaking is very fun. Periodically, all players emit a shockwave, inflicting damage, interrupting nearby allies. What if that shockwave also damaged enemies and also interrupted them? Ooh, now that's pretty fun. That's pretty cool. Okay, so then your positioning becomes quite skillful. You want to be close together so that everyone can hit as many enemies as possible with a shockwave, but you don't want to hit each other. And it also, again, frees you up in terms of interrupts. It makes that much more forgiving, which is intriguing. Volcanic, we've already seen. Same as necrotic. Explosive. Explosive orbs that detonate if not destroyed. This one seems to me to be, I would think this would be a little bit tedious, but I don't know, presumably the explosive orbs would also damage enemies. So if like you're fighting at if you're fighting at like a corner, you fight the enemies up here, they drop explosive orbs, you go around the corner, so you're a line of sight, but the enemies are now over here. They're still in line of sight of, well, where you are now, but also where the explosive orbs were. So the explosive orbs help you kill them. Kind of interesting, but it also seems like kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest. Seems like kind of a pain in the ass. So I'm not exactly sure. Maybe something like whenever you kill an explosive orb yourself, when you successfully deal with an explosive, it will do an AoE to enemies within, let's say, 3 or 5 yards of it or something like that. So you still will play explosive the same thing, just kill the orbs as quickly and as cleanly as possible. And when you deal with it correctly, it will do a smaller explosion in a smaller radius. So by skillfully placing enemies on top of them, which also makes them hard to target though, which is also kind of annoying, but you know what I mean? It would reward you. So just sort of thinking some ideas. Skittish isn't there. Overflowing doesn't exist. And Reaping and Infested were old seasonal affixes. So guys, they are the affixes. They are the affixes and some potential ideas for how this could work in a dungeon. I think it's really interesting. I love this idea. The last few seasonal affixes they've done, let's be honest, have been extremely good. Like Awakened was phenomenal, where you'd have these obelisks, which would have a mini boss inside them, allow you to do these massive skips throughout the dungeon. It would drop a portal where you kill the mini boss and you could kind of travel through this realm to skip packs. It was super cool. Prideful has been super cool. You fight this pride enemy that spawns, and you can control when it spawns. It gives you a big buff to then nuke down packs or bosses. Really interesting stuff. I think that, yeah, this would absolutely, the idea of having anima powers and turning the weekly affixes against the enemies, I think is like on the same sort of level as that. I think it's super fun. It has the advantage of every single week is different. It means that weeks where you've got bad affixes could actually potentially be fun because, yeah, the affixes suck for you, but they could also be really effective against your enemies. So yeah, this could really mix up the Mythic Plus stuff. It's just, there's a new fun thing then to do every single week. I mean, I've definitely been in the camp of wanting more kiss curse things. So stuff that has a negative effect, but also a positive effect, positive affixes. They're also implementing those in Torghast. It's great to see that they could be bringing them into Mythic Plus as well. Let me know what you think. Do any of those sound exciting? How would you like to see this implemented? Yeah, just let me know your thoughts because this is cool. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.